If your legs feel weaker than they used to, it doesn't always mean something is wrong. For many people, the change shows up quietly. Standing up takes a little more effort. Stairs feel heavier than they should. Balance feels less certain, even though nothing hurts and nothing looks obviously different. That moment of hesitation is what most people notice first. What's important and often misunderstood is that this usually isn't because strength suddenly disappeared. In fact, muscle loss is rarely the first thing to go. What changes first is how well the body supports movement. Legs rely on more than muscle. They depend on circulation, nerve signals, joint movement, and confidence working together. When one of these systems slips, the legs feel weak, even if the muscles themselves are still capable. This is why leg weakness often feels confusing. Some days feel better than others. Warm-up takes longer. Fatigue arrives sooner. And people start moving more carefully, not because they can't move, but because something feels off. When this is misunderstood, people often pull back too early. They walk less. They avoid stairs. And over time, that caution becomes part of the problem. The encouraging part is this. When you understand why the legs feel weaker, that change is often far more reversible than people expect. In this video, we'll go through 5 common reasons legs begin to feel weaker with age, and none of them assume damage or decline. Each reason explains a different kind of support that may be missing, and why restoring it can change how your legs feel day to day. If you've been noticing hesitation, heaviness, or reduced confidence in your legs, this may explain exactly what's been happening and what you can realistically do next. Reason 1, loss of muscle activation, not muscle loss. One of the most common reasons legs begin to feel weaker has nothing to do with muscles disappearing. It has to do with muscles being used less often and less fully. Muscle strength isn't just about size, it's about how frequently and confidently muscles are activated. When movement becomes more cautious, sitting more, standing less, avoiding stairs, shortening steps, the muscles of the legs receive fewer clear signals to engage. Over time, those signals soften. The muscles are still there, but they don't wake up as quickly or as strongly as they used to. That's when standing up feels slower, pushing off feels harder, and the legs feel weak even though they haven't truly lost their capacity. This is why many people notice leg weakness most when rising from a chair, climbing stairs, or starting to walk after sitting. These movements require strong, coordinated activation. When that activation is reduced, the movement feels heavy and uncertain. What's important to understand is that this type of weakness often comes before real muscle loss. It's an early signal, not a final stage. And that's good news, because activation responds well to gentle, consistent use. The legs don't need extreme exercise. They need regular reminders to engage standing fully, pushing through the feet using the muscles instead of avoiding them. When activation improves, strength often follows faster than expected. Movements feel smoother, confidence begins to return, and the legs stop feeling like they're lagging behind your intentions. This reason matters because it's one of the most reversible causes of leg weakness and also one of the most misunderstood. Next, we'll look at another common factor that makes legs feel weak even when muscles are present, how well blood and oxygen are reaching the lower body. Reason 2, reduced circulation to the lower body. Another very common reason legs begin to feel weaker has less to do with strength and more to do with delivery. The muscles in your legs rely on steady blood flow to work comfortably. Blood brings oxygen and nutrients that allow muscles to contract, sustain effort, and recover. When circulation slows, the legs don't necessarily hurt, but they fatigue faster and feel heavier than they should. This is why circulation-related weakness often feels confusing. The legs may not feel weak in the usual sense, they feel heavy. Endurance drops sooner. Walking feels fine at first, but effort builds quickly. By the end of the day, the legs feel weighed down, especially after long periods of sitting or standing. That heaviness is an important clue. Heavy legs aren't the same as weak legs, and they aren't the same as pain. They're often a sign that muscles aren't getting what they need fast enough, even though the muscles themselves are still capable. This is also why circulation-related leg weakness often improves after warming up. Once blood flow increases, movement feels easier and lighter. But if circulation support is missing overall, that improvement doesn't last. Many people mistake this pattern for aging. They assume, I'm just not as strong anymore, and start moving less. Over time, that cautious response reduces circulation even further, and confidence in the legs drops before strength truly does. That's the real risk here. When circulation issues are ignored, people don't usually lose strength first. They lose trust in their legs. And once that trust fades, activity levels often follow. The key point is this: circulation strongly affects how strong your legs feel, not just how strong they are. Supporting circulation doesn't require pushing harder. It comes from regular movement, position changes, and keeping the legs involved throughout the day so blood flow doesn't slow down for long stretches. Next, we'll look at a reason leg weakness can feel sudden or unpredictable. Even on days when circulation seems fine, changes in how clearly nerve signals reach the muscles. Reason 3, slower or less reliable nerve signaling. Another reason legs can feel weak even when muscles and circulation are present has to do with communication. Movement doesn't start in the legs, it starts in the nervous system. Every step you take depends on signals traveling from the brain, through the nerves, and into the muscles. When those signals arrive clearly and on time, movement feels automatic. When they arrive a little slower or less precisely, the legs can feel hesitant, unsteady, or delayed. This kind of weakness often feels unpredictable. Some days your legs feel fine. Other days, the first few steps feel uncertain. You may hesitate before moving, especially on uneven ground, stairs, or when changing direction. It's not that the legs can't move, it's that they don't respond as confidently as they used to. That hesitation is often mistaken for loss of strength. In reality, the muscles may still be capable, but the signal telling them when and how strongly to activate isn't as crisp. The result is slower reaction, reduced coordination, and a feeling that the legs are slightly out of sync with your intentions. This is also why leg weakness related to nerve signaling often improves once you're already moving. After a few steps, the system wakes up and movement feels smoother. But that delay at the start can reduce confidence and make people more cautious than necessary. When nerve signaling becomes less efficient, people often change how they move without realizing it. Steps become shorter, movements become guarded, and over time, that guarded movement contributes to fatigue and further weakness. The important thing to understand is that slower signaling is not the same as damage. It's often a functional change, not a failure. When movement is supported gently and consistently, nerve communication can become clearer again. And when signals improve, the legs often feel steadier and more responsive, without needing to get stronger first. Next, we'll look at another factor that quietly affects leg strength, joint stiffness, and how it changes the way muscles have to work. Reason 4. Joint stiffness makes the legs work overtime. Sometimes legs don't feel weaker because they've lost strength, but because they're working harder than they should. This often happens when joints become stiff. Joints don't just connect bones, they guide how force moves through the legs. When joints move freely, muscles can work efficiently. When joints stiffen, muscles are forced to compensate, and that compensation quietly drains endurance. That's the key issue. When joints don't move smoothly, the muscles around them have to generate extra force just to keep you stable. The result isn't pain, it's effort. And effort, repeated all day, feels like weakness. This is why leg weakness related to joint stiffness often shows up during movement, not at rest. Standing up feels heavier, walking feels less fluid. Going downstairs takes more concentration than it used to. Morning stiffness is a clear example. After rest, joints are less mobile. The muscles have to work harder to get things moving. By the time joints loosen, the muscles are already using more energy than necessary, and fatigue arrives sooner or later in the day. Over time, this compensation has a cost. Muscles that constantly make up for stiff joints tire faster. Confidence drops. Steps become shorter. Movements become guarded, not because strength is gone, but because efficiency is. This guarded movement then feeds the cycle. Reduced motion keeps joints stiff, which keeps muscles overworking. The important point is this: stiffness often comes before weakness, not the other way around. When joint movement improves, even modestly, muscles don't have to work overtime. Movement feels lighter, endurance improves, and the legs stop feeling like they're struggling to keep up. Supporting joints doesn't require pushing through discomfort. Gentle, regular movement through comfortable ranges often restores enough mobility to change how strong the legs feel. Next, we'll look at the final reason. Legs often feel weaker than they truly are. one that has less to do with muscles or joints and more to do with balance, confidence, and how the body protects itself. Reason 5. Balance confidence declines before strength does. One of the most overlooked reasons legs begin to feel weak has very little to do with muscle, joints, or circulation. It has to do with confidence. Balance isn't just physical, it's also neurological and psychological. When the body senses even a small increase in instability, it shifts into protection mode. Movements become cautious, steps shorten, push-off weakens, and the legs stop using their full strength, not because they can't, but because the body is trying to stay safe. This often happens quietly. You may notice yourself holding furniture when standing, pausing before stepping off a curb, or placing your feet more carefully than you used to. None of this means your legs are weak. It means your body is prioritizing stability over power, and that trade-off has consequences. When movement becomes guarded, muscles don't engage fully. Balanced muscles fire late. Strength feels unreliable. Over time, this protective pattern makes the legs feel weaker, even though their actual capacity hasn't changed much. This is why balance-related weakness often feels inconsistent. On good days, movement feels fine. On uncertain days, everything feels harder. The difference isn't strength. It's confidence and stability. What's important to understand is that confidence can decline before strength does. Once the body starts protecting itself, it limits movement automatically. That limitation, not your weakness, is what people feel. The good news is that balanced confidence responds quickly to reassurance and repetition. When the body experiences safe, steady movement again, it relaxes its guard. Steps become longer. Push-off returns, and strength feels more available. Legs don't just need power to feel strong. They need permission to use it. When balanced confidence improves, the legs often feel stronger almost immediately, not because anything changed structurally, but because the body stopped holding back. Next, we'll bring all 5 reasons together and look at what this means for moving forward calmly, realistically, and without fear. In most cases, it's about support fading before strength is actually lost. Muscle activation becomes quieter. Circulation slows, nerve signals hesitate, joints stiffen, and balanced confidence pulls movement back before the legs ever reach their true limit. When these changes happen together, the legs adapt, they move more carefully, they conserve effort. And that adaptation is what many people experience as weakness. The most important thing to remember is this: feeling weaker does not automatically mean becoming weaker. In many situations, the legs are still capable. They just aren't being supported in the same way they once were. And when support slips, the body protects itself by holding back. That's not failure. It's caution. And caution can be eased, not with extremes, not with fear, and not by forcing the body to perform, but by understanding what's missing and restoring it gently, one system at a time. You don't need to change everything at once. You don't need perfect routines. Progress often begins simply by recognizing which part of this explanation felt most familiar to you. Was it hesitation before moving? Heaviness by the end of the day? Stiffness that makes effort feel harder? Or loss of confidence in your balance? That recognition matters, because awareness is often the first step toward change. When the body feels supported, it stops bracing, and confidence returns before you consciously try to make it happen. Before you go, take a moment and leave a comment below. Which reason explained your experience best? We're building a community here for strong comebacks, so subscribe, hit the bell icon, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. If this was helpful and you want to support the effort behind it, give this video a like and share it with someone you love. Join me in the next video. I've got more surprises waiting for you.